Welcome to this video tutorial, and this aims to link the sociological theory to the methods that they may choose and why. So as you can see, different sociologists look at society in different ways, seeing different things and coming to different conclusions. And here I'm aiming to explore why this is and the impact it has on the research that they do. So let's start off with functionalist theory, and a popular starting point, and that's with Emile Durkheim. And he looked at society as a whole, and he was particularly interested in how society was organised within the different institutions and how they were working together to make society work as a whole. It was a consensus theory, and he believed that people were socialised into shared norms and values which maintained this consensus, and all this was within something that a later sociologist, Talcott Parsons, called the organic analogy. Now, writing in a similar time, Karl Marx didn't agree with Durkheim with his consensus theory. He saw conflict, in particular between the two classes, the bourgeoisie that own the means of production, who are exploiting the proletariat. And in turn, it was all about the accumulation of profit. However, he was interested, like Durkheim, in the whole of society, how it was structured and how it impacted the individual, and this was seen as a top-down approach. So how does this link to research methods? So let's have a look at what both Durkheim and Marx have in common. Well, they're both looking at the society as a whole. They're both considered macro or structural theories, and both were writing at the time that we would call the Enlightenment, an age of rationality and reason, and science was becoming to be seen as being very prestigious or having high status. And as a result, they believed that sociology wanted that status as well, and that society could be studied scientifically. So using scientific methods to collect quantitative data, we can start to see patterns of behaviour. They used a scientific way of research, using a standardised procedure. That is a set way of collecting data. So because of this standardised procedure, it was reliable. You can repeat that method again and again and again. And through this, you can then start to study large samples of people, and it becomes representative. You can start to generalise your findings to a wider population. And following that scientific method, largely ethically quite sound, you've got some sort of consent from them, and this is all to capture how and why people were acting in society, looking at that cause and effect. It will also include a standardised procedure to collect the sample who is going to be researched as well, and often they would use random sampling or systematic random sampling. So in order to capture the data about society as a whole, we particularly need methods that command a large sample. So official statistics, something that the government might collect on birth rate, divorce rate, unemployment rate, crime rates, GCSE results. There's absolutely loads. And these tend to be from maybe large-scale questionnaires or surveys such as the census. Also gives us lots of data that we can then start to see trends and patterns. However, it does pose some problems. Often they lack validity. For example, crime rates often don't capture all crimes due to lack of reporting or recording, leading to a dark figure. And secondly, despite showing patterns of behaviour, it often doesn't explain why we see those patterns. So this leads us quite nicely to look at our other end of the spectrum, the individual actions and social action theories and our interpretivist methods. So writing at a similar time to Durkheim and Marx, we've got Max Weber, and he took a different approach. He felt that studying people in the same way as the natural science is not the way to go. Instead, we want to focus on the meanings and the motives. And he goes that little bit further, emphasising on gaining empathy with the people that we are researching, and that was called Verstehen. And some of our more recent social action theories, such as Goffman, believed that we are social actors and society is like a play, and that is through our dramaturgical model. And a very important contribution that we see quite a few times throughout the sociology course comes from Howard Becker and the impact of labelling and researching those hard to research groups who we call the outsiders. So what's the link to research methods from our social action theories? So they tend to look at society at the individual level. They believe that we need to understand motives and we need to gain empathy with those that we are researching. So they tend to take an interpretivist approach. Now these tend to be seen as anti-positivist or non-scientific, and they are focusing more on qualitative data, which is capturing thoughts, feelings, words and so on. And the methods tend to not be a standardized procedure but quite flexible, following the lead of the people that you're researching and what they find important. So as a result, you get a lot more valid, rich, insightful data from the people that you're researching. However, this tends to be a little bit time consuming. So they tend to have a smaller sample. It's not as representative. Sometimes we question our ethics on this, but we're trying to capture what meaning does it have for the people or the social actors that are involved. So thinking about the methods that they might use, and this is usually because of the topics of what they are studying by interpretivists, they tend to be groups that are often hard to research, and using scientific methods doesn't allow us to do that. So instead they prefer things like secondary sources such as documents, observations and unstructured interviews, and they believe that methods such as an unstructured interview will allow a person to open up about a sensitive topic. Observing a person in their true life rather than in a lab leads to more honest and true behaviour. And documents such as diaries and paintings allow us to study past events, and this allows us to meet the main goal of validity. However, despite this, problems do occur, such as practical issues of time constraints, cost to the research, ethics such as consent, especially if the observation is covert, and theoretical issues of it being a small sample and not being able to generalise. However, interpretivists do believe that this is the right method to use if we want to capture human nature as it happens. So, in summary, it's good if we want to study society as a whole using our positivist method, if we want to see trends and patterns, cause and effect. And the status of sociology as an academic discipline meant that positivist was the way forward. However, our interpretivists, they focus on the small scale, the interactions, the meanings and the motives of why they act in a way they do, and that influences the methods that they choose. Now, we're not going to just finish there. What about feminist? Now, these can often be located drifting between the two. They sometimes look at quantitative patterns of behaviour, like our positivist would, looking at statistics, unemployment and the workforce, or cause and effect in changes in legislation and how that might impact, for example, GCSE results and achievement levels of girls, for example. But they also look at methods which capture lots of qualitative data, and sensitive topics need empathy, and some of the topics that feminists look at, for example Dobash and Dobash into domestic violence, and Anne Oakley's really powerful research into motherhood really shows how the value of using interpretivist methods can be used to benefit feminism, because they feel that this eradicated the power imbalance of the powerful researcher and the powerless interviewee, and having an unstructured form of interviews, for example, this free-flowing conversation readdresses that power balance. So massive thank you for watching. Hope you found this really useful while looking at how the theory influences the method that sociologists use. If you've got any questions, please leave a comment and I will get back to you. Thank you.